Team, welcome back. We are capping off this series on talking about the future of fitness with our youth. And today we sit down with Matt Paterson. It's the second time he's been on the podcast, but we felt like he was just a very appropriate person to have talking about the subject. He runs one of Hong Kong's most successful, if not the most successful, youth mini sport coaching program. And he has a ton of wisdom and insights on, how to get your kids involved with sport, how to, select the right coaches, select the best programs for different ages. And this is something that I am thinking about a lot right now as I am on the brink of becoming a father. So if you're like me, or you have children yourself, or something I really took away from this episode is just reflecting back on my years as a child and the decisions that my parents made. So I think something for everyone. Enjoy. Matt Paterson, welcome back to Process Podcast.
Pleasure to be here, Ed Haynes.
Second time you have been on.
It is, and that's a somewhat elite club, I believe.
That's a very, very prestigious club to be in.
Great,
but there is a reason that you were on here. We are obviously running a season right now where we're talking about youth development sport, and you've been in this game for a while now.
13 years, yeah.
13 years, and since you were last on, you're now, you were a dad, but Rory is now 3.
Yes, he's a fully, responsive and very, he can really hold his own when it comes to a conversation. So it's thrown a lot of new challenges my way in the last year and a half. I believe he was 3 when we had this conversation last year. Yeah. So now he's 4.5. And
Wait, was our last chat a year and a half ago?
It was April 2024.
Feels like it was way long ago. Way further away than that. Okay, well, Izzy is joining us once again. Izzy, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome. We're going to leave it at that.
Yep.
I thought this is especially good having you two on here because Isla is a massive fan of mini sport. She does this every week.
Yes,
and you have been, massively complimentary about all the impacts and the amazing things it has done for her physically and mentally and socially, I think in every aspect of her being. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of sharing between you two. But let's kind of like go back to origins, Paterson. Well, firstly, actually, one more thing to add. You and I have known each other for a very, very, very long time.
We have.
You arrived 9? Were you 9 years old?
I was 9, turning 9, yeah.
Yeah, you rocked up at Kellett School, I remember. And a little English kid, quite good at football. And then you and I basically, we went, finished primary school together, did secondary together, and have basically remained friends ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been some journey.
Anything else you want to say in that?
No, when I moved here, I was turning 9, and I'd only played a couple of sports in the UK. Football is bread and butter. As long as there's a playground or a concrete field, you play football. It's the world sport for a reason because there's not really any complex rules like a lot of the American sports have. That's why a lot of Americans play football, soccer, so they're 7 or 8 and they can then understand the rules of baseball, basketball, and all these other things. So football was something I naturally played in a lot when I was younger. And tennis, because my dad's an avid tennis player. But when I came to the shores of Hong Kong, as quite a shy young 8-year-old, I was thrust into this new environment where people were playing hockey, cricket, rugby. I played one game of rugby for Kellett School, and I think we touched on this briefly, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I felt like I was on analog by Ed Haynes, who was behind me telling me when to catch the ball, when to throw the ball, where to go, and I felt so out of place. And, as a kid who was trying to make new impressions, set a new, environment to live in and, social circles and all of that, it really threw me off. I never played rugby again after that day. So I think, looking back when I decided to start a company, I thought that, allowing children to at least identify with multiple sports by the time they are 5, 6 is something that I really hold dear to me because, we're not trying to make the next Messi or Ronaldo in our program. It's more about building character, building association towards sport, so that young people feel confident when they're faced with these new challenges. So that's really the essence of where my mini sport concept came from.
Okay, so you started the business 13 years ago, right?
Yes.
And I think in hearing you say that, talking about the fact that you as a youngster in the UK, you had a very specialized sport, which was football and a bit of tennis. And then coming here, you realized that was maybe a disadvantage or, that you were the odd one out. Amongst your peers. Was that a massive driving force behind creating multi-sport mini sport in the first place, or is there something that like you've brought that you created awareness on in the later years?
A bit of both, I think. I feel that now as a father as well. I mean, I started the business well before I had a son, but I really see the benefit of the program now. I have a son, and I can actually see which sport he wants to take on and give him the choice. But yeah, it was just I really felt that my life could have been slightly different, not better or worse, but just different. I would have definitely not had quite as much sort of built up, not trauma, but definitely sort of nervousness and sort of a lot of hesitation as a young child coming face to face with new sports for the first time. I was quite a shy kid, believe it or not. So perhaps a lot of it was due to my personality as well. Some kids who are 8 or 9 might be able to pick up a new sport and just get on with it. But with the combination of moving to a new city and having all these new sports and other people having, I wasn't used to being the worst at a sport, or and that was something that immediately hit me, which is I feel we have this a lot with our program. You have kids that are leading in tennis and they're really good at hitting things, and then you have a football class the next week and they're following. So it's really good from a young age to just instill in these young children that there are periods where you can lead and there are periods where you can follow, and neither is right or wrong. And I think by maintaining the same coach, the same environment, the same classmates, we create all of the same consistency around the class so that we just change the sport. Because a lot of the time when children turn up to a new venue for a basketball class and it's really loud and there's kids they don't know and a coach they don't know, there's a multitude of things that could be throwing them off basketball, but they label it as, oh, I don't like basketball. And actually with a 3 or 4 year old, it's very hard to dig into the real why behind why they're not participating. And we try and keep everything as consistent as we can. So if only the variable that we change is the sport, then we can really sort of get a very clear vision on whether or not it is the sport that the child enjoys, or if it's just the teacher or the classmates or the venue.
Paterson, can you just talk us through mini sport? Like, we actually haven't broken this down. Like, what is or who is mini sport and what do you do?
Sure. So we have a team in Hong Kong of 20 coaches, and they come from all over the world. Some are from South Africa, Australia, the UK predominantly, and lots of coaches that we've built up great relationships with here. So we've got a team of 20 coaches in Hong Kong. We're in Singapore, so we have a team of 6 coaches there. Our franchise started there last June, and we also have Taiwan that just launched last week. So we have 1 coach in Taiwan at the moment. And in terms of what we're a multi-sport program that dedicated to multiple sport. You can't ask for a tennis class with us or a football class. You plug your child into the program like Isla, and it's 2 weeks of tennis, and then the next 2 weeks it will be football, and then it'll be basketball. That's what we do. You have to put your child into our system, and if you leave them there for long enough, say 2-3 years, after that period, you'll know that they've ticked. They've done 18 or 20 classes of each sport. And we do find it's a good logistical and financial solution for parents, because instead of having to deal with 6 different companies, 6 different venues, 6 different credit policies, 6 different WhatsApp group, whatever it is, it's much easier for parents to just plug and play through our system. So we start at 1.5 and we go through to 6. Often children will leave the program before because they've identified via the app that we've built that their child is, showing a particular interest in hockey or tennis or football, and then they'll depart to specialize in that. But at least parents can leave the program with the knowledge that the child has made an empowered decision, or there's some metrics behind the decision they're making. 56% of parents, when they enroll children into these programs, it's because they did the sport as a child. And this is something that is natural. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? We've had great experiences in the sports that we've played. They've formed friendship groups, great memories. You maybe traveled with these sports. It's a real big part of your identity. Why wouldn't you want that for your child? But, creating a platform where children can touch upon all these different sports, and you can actually realize that potentially, maybe for me, football might not be my son's interest. It might be basketball. We have to realize as parents that, yes, we spent all this time and energy in this sport, whichever domain we ended up in. But if we weren't in that domain, we may well have been in another sport, creating other memories with equally valuable social, groups and circles. So I think, that's...
As a parent who put your daughter into mini sport, and I know you put Isla in early. I think you begged.
I basically begged you guys to take her at 13 months.
So why did you choose mini sport? What about mini sport was it that you liked about them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack with what Matt said, and it really, while he was saying all that, made me reflect on my upbringing and how like I differ greatly from a lot of your experiences, which I think is why I aligned with mini sport so heavily. Because in my school, we had a different sport every term. So I was brought up that we would always do 3 different sports throughout the year. And we had tons of options. Like if you didn't want to do volleyball, basketball, and soccer, which was the main 3, you could do track and field or you can do swim. And so there was always a multitude of options. And that's just the way that I was brought up. And so I would at least do 3 every year. And I had no intention of specializing anything. Yes, I still played in uni, but I knew I wasn't going to be pro. But it was just ingrained in me that physical activity was a part of everyday life, you know, and that it really brought up skills and attributes in myself like commitment, discipline, teamwork, all of these things, which are things that I still have in my life today, that I do look at other friends who don't have gym in their life. And it's like, well, I believe I want to train every day and be healthy and physically fit because I did that when I was young, you know? And so that's just what I really wanted for Isla. And when I was looking for her to enroll her in something, it was that I didn't want to put what I enjoyed specifically, which is strength and conditioning right now, because again, she couldn't at 2 anyways. But I wanted to give her that experience of what I had, which is we're going to have physical activity in our life, regardless of what it is that you choose. And you are going to learn authority because you have a coach telling you what to do. You are going to learn teamwork because there are other people there who you have to work along with. And I haven't really said it out loud, but a lot of the reasons that I did choose mini sport as well, because I wanted her to have a male figure in her life, because I'm a single mom at the minute, and all her teachers in school are female. And it's one of the things where I was like, okay, well, she needs a male authoritative figure in her life. And she is absolutely obsessed with Coach Daniel, probably unhealthily obsessed. But like we've stayed with him for 3 terms now, because just like what you were saying, when they know the coach and they build that relationship, she's more likely to enjoy it and she's more likely to participate, right? She definitely is not into tennis. I can tell that already after 3 terms with you guys. She looks at the racket and has 0 interest.
And that's great to know.
Yeah.
Right?
But she
Because
still will do the other parts of it, which, and if Coach Daniel tells her to at least try, she will try, because she's now built that bond. And like, if I tell her, if some days, just like every day, we don't have the motivation to want to do something, I'm like, but you're going to see Coach Daniel. She'll be like, okay, you know, because then she knows, like she's built that. And so that's really why I wanted to enroll her in those things. And I think for me, I know that I can't provide Isla with a silver spoon life, but I can provide her with the resiliency and the dedication and the motivation to do things, even though she doesn't want to do it. And that's really what I feel sport does for you, regardless of which sport it is. So I think like, a lot of my background I wouldn't force anything on her, but I would be heartbroken if she didn't like physical activity. I'm not going to lie. Like if she preferred something I couldn't have that bond with, it would be hard for me. I'm thankful she does enjoy it, but let's see in the future if she prefers something else that I can't really relate to.
Yeah.
How did you land on basketball, football, and tennis as the 3 main sports?
Well, we have 6.
Okay.
So we basically have 3 ball sports, if you like: basketball, rugby, and football, that are bouncing, kicking, and throwing balls. And then we have 3 sort of instrument sports, if you like: so tennis, hockey, and cricket, which we're just introducing cricket next 2 weeks from now. So we felt that culturally those aligned for where we were. Football and basketball obviously being very, very popular here, and rugby. Hockey was something that we really wanted, a striking sport alongside tennis, because we found that a lot of kids like hitting things, and we could harness. There's a lot of great games you can build with hockey, which happens to be Rory's on his app. That's the sport that he is most suited to, according to the data that our coaches have provided after classes. So we wanted to. The other problem with, we have 1.5 to 6-year-olds, so fundamentally projection skills, throwing, kicking, striking balls away from your body is easier than reception skills. So catching and tracking, and these things are much harder for children to sort of master. So there are some sports that are just very much not appropriate. Like we're looking at potentially Philippines now, we're speaking to some people there, and they say, volleyball is really big here, and you just can't play volleyball with a 2-year-old because there's so much reception. It's basically there is projection elements to it, but if you can't
If
receive
you can't
something,
catch it, you're not getting
you,
it back.
you
Yeah.
know, so yes, you
Yeah.
could do it with balloons or whatever, but it's there are games that really, or sports that really shouldn't be introduced until a later stage, like the American sports I mentioned earlier. That's why everyone plays soccer in America until they're 7 or 8. Simply
Is
because
that more of a new thing though in the US? Or has that always been the way?
I think the little league football, like the soccer thing, there is huge. It's been like that since as far as 60s.
That's where the term soccer mom comes from, America.
Yeah. No, I got that. Okay, so we're going back to so when you're saying the specialist sports, like, what do you mean specialist sports? Did you say specialist sports? I just make up that word. The American sports. Okay,
American sports generally, they have a lot of complex rules.
Right. They've also got very specific positions.
Specific positions, try and get 2-year-olds to stand up in a line is one thing. Trying to get them to play baseball where one kid's throwing, the other one's hitting, and the other guys are sitting on the bench waiting their turn. It's just not going to happen. Same with basketball, not being able to double dribble. There's a lot of we've incorporated basketball, but in terms of the actually playing it, like in a match scenario, you can play a soccer game at 4. You can't really do too many other sports at that age, actually. Even rugby, with the idea of throwing the ball backwards, this is something that children really kind of struggle to comprehend until they're a little bit older. So I never quite got
I just had a massive flashback of that game.
I throwing the ball forward.
I still really remember that game. No, I'm pretty sure you set me up for a try. I remember you getting the ball.
If only you'd praised me more, I could have made it in the rugby.
You got that ball, and I remember started running sideways across the field, shitting yourself. I remember I was actually just hovering at the back, just kind of telling Paterson where to go. And I remember you just got this ball, start sprinting sideways, and I just go Paterson, pass the ball now, and he just lobbed it over his shoulder. But it actually went perfectly. I remember it was perfect, and we're 8-1. I can't believe I can actually still vividly remember this.
Sandy Bay.
Maybe because I was this is fucking cool. Paterson's actually playing rugby here, and he's giving it a go, which is actually why it's really surprising hearing you say that it was that moment has
stuck with me forever.
With you. Yeah, not necessarily. Well, obviously it's been a springboard to lots of positive change, but I had no idea. I was there thinking, wow, it's so cool that he's just giving this a go, and actually pretty good.
Tries.
Yeah, actually did some pretty good stuff. And I remember thinking, I'm really impressed that you've just been able to do that for your first time. Yeah. Probably didn't share. It's probably the first time I shared this with you.
You're much more communicative now than
maybe
you were.
If you shared it, he would have stayed.
Maybe
exactly, and then Minisport wouldn't be here. So it's all meant to be.
Yeah,
but,
so you're welcome.
No, it's great to hear that Isla's enjoying the program. It's a pleasure to have her, and I know that Dan, really would love to hear everything, and will hear everything you just said. So, thank you.
No, I think going back to that and what we were kind of talking about before the podcast is I think coaching is a super huge part of a child's development, how good the coach is in terms of how well they'll enjoy physical activity and sports in general. Because I do see other sports, we have tried things like gymnastics, and the coach just didn't give the same energy or love or attention that's one of the first things that we dropped out of. And we tried different things, right? And I was lucky that my first experiences with mini sport, just the coaches are on a different level in the sense of no problem, in the sense of how they can connect with the children, but also how they can kind of know when to push to challenge them, but when to allow them to have space to be you're not meant to listen to every single word that I'm saying right now, because if they were forcing her to do something she didn't want to do, she wouldn't want to go back, and I think they really have that mental awareness of when to give and when to take.
Being adaptable is so important when it comes to this age group, because you can have a lesson planned, and if it's not going well, you've got to do something differently because you can't just keep pushing. It's hard enough to negotiate with 1 2-year-old, let alone 10 of them. So if things aren't going well, we're very much about coaching being an art rather than a science. There is an art to it, and noticing when certain kids are losing attention or other kids are louder in the class. Maybe you need to use them for demonstrations. Other ones should be following, other ones should be leading. There are nuances to coaching that really we want coaches to be able to feel the class and adapt and go back to games. So just at the end of the day, you want the kids moving. Learning skills is obviously brilliant, but you don't want a static sport class. We're really big on dynamic activities, so everyone moving at the same time if we can. There'll always be a degree of sitting down to listen to instructions, which is very important because actually, I've seen it in a lot of other places, where the kids just don't know what they're meant to do. So the demonstration and taking a minute while the kids are sat down to really explain clearly once or twice and maybe get someone to show what we're doing before setting them off for 5 minutes is really important. So we can't have them moving all the time, but we do try and make sure that we're not kids sitting down, sitting in lines, this static activities are very old school. And, at the end of the day, for parents, for adults, it's tiring for us to move. For kids, it's tiring for them to sit still.
Yeah.
So this is what we try and tell our coaches, like, you can demonstrate, but you're losing them. Whereas with parents, with adults, if you're trying to push them physically, you'll lose them that way. It's quite an interesting way to think about things because kids need to move to stay focused.
Team, I want to quickly interrupt this episode to give a little shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. This little journal has made such a massive, profound impact on my life since I started using it. When I started using it, I actually didn't know that it was backed by neuroscience, but now it totally makes sense. This has brought a ton of gratitude to my life. It keeps me on track and focused on the things I need to do day to day and brings a lot of context as to how each day fits within the greater week and the greater month. So if you, like me, really care about trying to be a high performer and want to do everything you can to make that happen, I cannot recommend this journal enough. Use our discount code, The Process, to grab yours today.
And literally everything you're saying there are all the same principles that we incorporate with coaching adults here.
Okay, right.
Like actually almost exactly the same. Even just thinking about the different types of people in a class, the loud, like energetic ones, we always use them for the demos. Right?
It's like I think it's like an orchestra. You're the conductor. Sometimes you need to bring some people up and put some people down, or it's definitely that's the kind of metaphor I use a lot. It's like running an orchestra.
Okay, so with your coaches, how much of this is like nature versus nurture? Like, when it comes to hiring, what are some of the key things that you're looking for in people that tell you this person's going to be, a great coach for, 1 to 6 year olds?
Yeah, definitely it helps to be young and full of energy.
Yeah.
Now, with that obviously comes a lack of potential experience, especially with this age group. We get a lot of people that have coached 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and it is a different, ballpark. It's a different ball game when you're coaching such young children. Adaptability also comes with, people that are younger. This is not a universal rule. We have older coaches too, but generally speaking, having that energy, having that adaptability is key. We've had really good athletes that top of their game relatively top of the game, like you were in Hong Kong rugby.
Subtle dig right there.
Top of the local game.
Wait, bro. I can't believe it's taken like 15 minutes for him to have his
We've had some very accomplished sports people that don't make good coaches. They think they know the way. They don't want to be trained. They think and they don't really want to coach multiple sports. So I think the attitude and the energy is really important. You can work with that. So attitude and energy, I'd say the two main things really.
And what is that when you say attitude? What are you talking about with attitude?
I think willing to realign what their expectations of a good class looks like you said earlier, in terms of before the podcast, not everything's always going to go perfectly in a class, but realizing that if you can get 80% compliance with a group of 2-year-olds, that's pretty good. With 10-year-olds, that wouldn't be maybe the target you're aiming for. So just changing the pressure the coaches put themselves under and actually trying to make them relax into it a little bit. You always see a tipping point with coaches where they've gone from stressing out, this isn't working, the breath's really shallow, and you can tell it's like, let's take a break now, and they're in the bag, and it's like you can tell they're like, oh my god, I'm under pressure, and then all of a sudden once they've reached a certain level where they know they're really confident. It happened with me as well. The messaging is basically I've put on the best possible opportunity for these kids to learn whatever I'm teaching them with clear instructions, good pace, good tone of voice, the space is appropriate, the equipment's appropriate, everything is in place. If they're not doing it, that's actually an uncontrollable at that point.
Yep.
So I think, teaching coaches to control what you can control and don't beat yourself up when it doesn't go to plan. In fact, that's the nature of the job, right? I mean, patience is the key currency really for a coach.
Yeah, I think one key class that really, base of everything you said that stuck in my mind was we were in, it wasn't even outside. Some of the outdoor classes are actually so hectic for a coach to be able to run because you have usually like another sporting group, which is like right next to you. And then there's like kids out in the picnic and then there's birds and airplanes and everyone's like, oh, so it's like hard to capture that attention. But it was actually in one of your venues. And there was 5 of them, and they were all girls with the coaches, and it was just an off day. And sometimes you have that where just the kids are just not having it. And like even Isla was one of them where it was like there was screaming, there was crying, everyone was like not listening, everyone was throwing their things, like, or just like it was a huff and puff class right from the start.
Yeah.
And it was Coach Daniel, it was just like he completely went off what was meant to happen that day and just ran a class that was more enjoyable, and they played and he tried his best. They took more breaks in order to like realign, and then he brought out the bubble, so it's like you can't just have this script of like, today we're gonna learn tennis, when it's like they're having a bad day. And like that stuck in my mind, that in the end it still turned out to be a very productive 45-minute class that everyone
turns out
enjoyed.
to be one of the more memorable sessions,
exactly.
right? To pull that back.
So can I ask you, what dictates whether a session for Isla is a successful session?
I think her just moving in general and being there, she'll follow along 3/4 of the way. There's always a bit in the middle where she's done, right before they probably do the last activity and game, where she can be lured back in by saying, if we do this, you're gonna get a stamp, so then she'll be like, okay, I'm back in, I want the stamp, that's usually one skill in the middle where she doesn't. And if I can get her to do 3/4 of the class, that for me is successful. She's 2 years old. Being able to concentrate for 30 minutes is a huge win for me as a parent.
I think one of the golden rules really that we try and teach our coaches is equipment is your friend. And if you release it all at the beginning of the class and it's all out there, you don't have anything else to literally pull out of the bag. So we always finish with 5 or 10 minutes of party games, whether it's parachutes or treasure hunts or something that's not even sport related. It's just the kids' attentions are waning. We need to do something that's really enticing for them to just get them through, the last bit. But it does teach them when they're at that drop off point to keep going is I think really important.
And it's like working for a reward, which is a life skill. All of these things that I feel that she's learning are all life skills, like being able to work with others, being able to listen to directions, being able to wait, like go through uncomfortable things for pleasure at the end, which always is the stamp or the sticker or something like that, which she absolutely loves for a 2-year-old. And it's like, those are all life skills that are just already being ingrained in her at so young, which is why I love sport.
So Paterson, let's talk about the key essential ingredients of a mini sport class. So you've talked about obviously the different sports. You talked about why you've selected ball sports versus the hitting sports.
Yep.
But what are the foundations for the things that you're trying to teach the kids or expose them to?
So we are very much, we want to build character at the end of the day, because we're not going to, if they're 3 or 4 years old, you're not creating real athlete, champion, junior. We're trying to create character and resilience and sportsmanship and happy memories. Essentially, memories are the main thing. I always want to make sure that our coaches have positive memories, regardless of whether they're with us for 6 months, 6 years, or whatever. We don't want to leave the company with positive memories. It's the same for the kids. Okay, so ensuring that there's a positive outcome, a positive association to sport is key. Doesn't really matter if you can hit a backhand and a forehand at tennis, as long as you have a positive attitude towards tennis. That is our real outcome. So a positive class is really the purpose of what we do. And to create a positive class, you need quite a lot of different things. The right venue, the right number of kids in a class, where we strictly cap our classes at 10, and most of the classes with 10 have 2 coaches as well as guardians there. So there's a lot of attention on the children. The class size, the venue, the delivery of instruction, as I mentioned earlier. Simple things, knowing names, things like this. If I turn up to a coach's session and he's been with a group for 4 or 5 weeks and he doesn't know all their names, that's a big red flag for me, because children who are 3 don't know much about, they might know their favorite colors, numbers, and they definitely know their name. So if you don't know their name, it's not very strong foundation for building that relationship that Dan has obviously built with Isla, which really is the foundation for introducing new things. I can try and introduce my son to new sports and stuff, and he'll often just bat me away because I'm his dad. But if you can create that relationship with a coach where, maybe she doesn't like tennis, but if Coach Dan asks her to play tennis, then okay, I'm going to give this a go because the trust is already there. Those are kind of the main things, but it's all about creating positive associations and memories.
Where does winning and losing come into this? Does it come into it?
So only really when we get to our Explorers program, which is 4 to 6 year olds, we try and incorporate competition and cooperation. Kids that are sort of 3 and under, even 4, a lot of the time they are working along, just playing alongside. They're not really cooperating. We do in our mini tots, which is our middle age group, we do a little bit of competition, but the cooperation and competition really kicks on in the Explorers program, where classes are more high intensity. And yeah, there is no real winning or losing in the play group or mini tots age group, really. It's much more about effort and attitude. In fact, on Monday, we are releasing a whole new range of features on our app that we built. And these features, along with user levels for rewarding loyal clients like yourself, we are introducing character badges for children. So the reporting we have at the moment is very numeric. It comes out at the end of the month. As a parent myself, I find it quite hard to really put any of that data into action, apart from maybe which sport my son is most interested in. What we're moving to now is a weekly reporting system whereby when you get home after your class at 7:00 at night, which is the deadline for coaches to provide this information, you'll get badges. So maybe Isla was kind or funny or shared today or was persistent or she was very focused. So you'll be able to build up this portfolio of character traits, which also gain you loyalty points for your membership. But basically what we're trying to do is build a more dynamic and wholesome profile for the children. So you can look back over 20, 30 classes and realize what trends and what characteristics your child is showing through sport. So that's a big change that's coming for us. So really the focus for us is not about trying to create top tennis players or football players. It's about, during this journey that they're with us when they're 1.5 to 6, how has their character developed and how have they, which kind of, character profile are they fitting? Yeah. This is the kind of foundation. As you sit down for dinner, you can speak to Isla saying, oh, you shared something in class today. Can you tell me more about that? Much better doing that than saying, oh, you got a 4 for following instructions. So this is kind of where we're moving into.
No, I really like that. Going back to, because when we spoke with the other 2 people about kind of what they see in school that is beneficial and not beneficial towards children. One of the things that we've spoken about is like giving more opportunities for exercise, because parents here, especially in Hong Kong, really push their kids academically. Again, it goes to this idea of pushing your kids into things that then they may end up resenting or they actually don't enjoy, but they're only doing it because their parents are enjoying it, right? But then we haven't really spoken about the sporting side. Is like, in your experience, is that something that's big here in Hong Kong?
It is, in terms of forcing kids into sport. Well, definitely. And I think I have even fallen victim to this, and which is the irony is not lost on me. I've built a program to help parents understand which sport their child wants to follow and which sport their child wants to pursue. Yet there I am on a Saturday morning trying to get my son to play a certain sport, which I loved as a child, and he's not enjoying it. And I'm having a meltdown in the toilet asking AI if I'm a good parent. So it's not, the irony is not lost on me. It took me a couple of sessions to realize how ridiculous that situation was, because I'm obviously very aware of these paradigms that exist. But it's 100%. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the show, why wouldn't you put your kid in a sport that you loved? And it does kind of, if they don't instantly take to it, you do start thinking, oh my goodness, they're not going to get all these memories and all these things that I got from the sport, and other kids are playing. It's really quite an interesting process to go through as a parent. And I'm very much in an interesting age. My son's 4.5. He'll tell you that, not 4 anymore. And you're going through a phase now where instead of you making all the decisions for your child, I'll send you to this and that and whatever else on a Tuesday and this on a Friday. Children are now developing their own sense of autonomy. And so there's a good framework to follow for parents out there, which is called selective autonomy. So or structured autonomy, sorry. So you're basically providing autonomy within a structure. So instead of saying you play football once a week, we say something like, we do something active once a week, and then you also give them options within that. So would you like to play football or tennis? Okay, rather than trying to direct things onto kids. So you're trying to give them some kind of freedom, but within a framework. And so that's something I'm trying to come to terms with at the moment. I should just look at my Minisport app and get him into a hockey class, to be honest, because that's what I'm being told to do. But I'm still falling victim to doing what I wanted my kid to do from my own experiences. So you really got to start looking at the why. Like, why are kids, if they're not participating, why is that? You've got to separate your own identity first. Look for reasons. Is there a burnout? Are they getting bored? Is it the child that doesn't like the sport, or is it the setting that's actually not giving them the chance to enjoy the sport? So red flags I would look for in any educational setting are there too many kids? Are the instructions being given clearly enough? Again, like I said, are names being used? Is the pace of activity correct? Is it age appropriate? Is the right equipment there? Because at the end of the day, it's fine for my son to not like a sport that I liked, but I'll only accept that if he's been given an opportunity in an environment where he can actually
Try and enjoy.
understand what he's meant to be doing.
I can see how hard that is as a parent though, because I'm thinking about this stuff a lot, and myself and Cammy both grew up as very sporty people. We're always talking about, well, where do we want to push our children? Not push, but what do we want our kids to do?
Which doors do you want to open?
Exactly, yeah. And then Cammy's always like, oh, you look how broken you are from rugby. Like, our child is definitely not playing rugby. And part of me is kind of like, well, I kind of agree, but I also know a lot of people who thrived in rugby who didn't have the injuries that I had. So it's not, it could actually just be me playing a sport we just didn't match up. But then even just hearing what you're saying there, right? You can put your kid into a program and they are clearly not showing interest in a certain sport, but is it actually the kid doesn't want the sport, or is it the coach, the environment, another kid in the class, they had one bad experience? And I think it's like, then it's tough because, as a parent, you say, okay, well, if they want to force him into football because he clearly doesn't like football or she doesn't like football, so let's just let them choose. But then maybe put them to another football program, they could just thrive and excel. So
it's a minefield.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm lucky that I have experience in this area that I can actually spot. Actually, that's not good coaching practice. Maybe we'll try another one. But I think, it's quite clear. If you're, I would say the first port of call, if your child is not engaging in a particular sports program, a specific sport program. I mean, what we do is change every 2 weeks. So the kids don't really get like program fatigue, really. They always try new things. But if your child is not participating in a specific sport activity that you've put them into, I would say, firstly, alternatives over ultimatums is very important. So instead of saying, right, we're not playing football again, or if you don't play football, this will happen. I almost caught myself saying this to my own son. It's literally like, if you don't start playing now, we're going to leave. We'll go to the library. He's like, I want to go to the library. So it actually didn't turn out to be a threat. But, you catch yourself doing this, and you have to it's always a journey for every parent. Like, you catch yourself, even if you know these things end up, there are rules against doing these things for a reason, because they're common, right? But alternatives over ultimatums, 100% what you need to do. So whether that's an alternative sport or an alternative alternative program within the same sport, those are the best, ways to approach non-participation. But, sometimes you do just need to take a break. And, there is a point of diminishing returns where it's not healthy for you to maintain, this pressure on your child. It's not a good experience for you as a parent, or as a child, or for the coach and the kids involved either. So
is there a rule of thumb of how long you should give? Because, for example, like if you've given them that choice of, for example, tennis or soccer, and they're like soccer, but then they're halfway through the term and they're like, I don't want to do soccer anymore. Like, how do you be like, you're going to finish this
4 to
soccer
6 weeks
or
is
4
the
to
answer.
6 weeks,
I would say I would actually advise most parents who are looking for a specific sport program to see if there are companies that will allow you to do a 4 to 6 week trial. The first one's often a bit all over the place. Second one is still getting, by 4 or 5 sessions, you start to spot patterns. And I think, most reasonable companies will understand that. And I think framing that for your child is a lot more approachable when they are of age, say 4 and 5, and they can actually understand what the context of the experience is. You can say, we're going to try this sport for 4 sessions, and if you like it, we can continue. There's a much higher chance of them actually then deciding to take it on themselves, rather than saying you're now playing tennis every Saturday for the rest of your life, which is obviously not that motivating. So how you frame that is very important.
Okay, questions to both of you. Paterson, I know that you grew up playing much more of a specialized couple of sports, but I'll start with you. Can you think back, because I'm thinking back to my childhood a lot right now, about the sports and stuff that I did, and the ones that stuck and the ones that didn't. Do you have specific memories of sports that maybe your dad asked you or pushed you to play that you were just like, nah, absolutely not, it's not happening?
No.
I
think I was very lucky that my dad never pushed us into do anything we didn't want to do. It was always our choice. But I remember my swimming coach not being the best, and so I quit swimming very early.
What age are we talking?
I only gave it probably 2 seasons, and I was like 11 or 12, because that was something I was taking a break from team sports, and I was getting into like track and field, long distance running, and swimming to see if I liked individual sports better. And I just not enjoy my coaching swimming experience, and so I just, even now if I think about it, like I don't enjoy just going for a swim.
So many people have that relationship with swimming. Because it's loud, it's echoey, you have to change, the bathrooms are kind of gross. You're
staring at the bottom of the pool the whole time, and you can't talk to anyone when you're doing it. That's honestly the repetition of literally looking at a blue line.
But you're a
And then
team sport
yeah.
person.
but I don't mind. I like doing individual pursuits. Like a lot of team sport training, sometimes you're by yourself having to do the runs or the thing, you know. But the idea of literally looking at the bottom of the pool, I can't listen to music. Well, you can do that now, but you know, in our time, you couldn't do that. You're just looking at fucking blue line. The blue line stops. You hit a wall and you turn around. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
like,
I do
Why-
think like, yeah, and my wife Danielle, who you know, she will tell you how her childhood experience of swimming have really just put her off it
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
put me
just-
off.
just
It-
didn't
like
the-
even now, like, and I'm probably not related, but I just don't want to like even just go in the ocean for a swim. You know what I mean? I'm just like,
I get
have
very
so
bored very
bad
quick, yeah.
memories of swimming, and so that's not because anybody pushed me into it, but just because of my coaching experience, competitive experiences, and like childhood experience in general. Swimming is just off the table for me.
Yeah, you know what? I think thinking back to my younger years, you have highlighted a lot, you know, the power of the coach, and obviously you have as well with Isla. I don't think I'd ever really connected my like love for certain sports and why I stuck with like football and rugby more to the actual coaches I had. But looking back, I can actually remember some really good coaches in those sports. And we were saying on the podcast, I think a couple of weeks ago, I was very fortunate that a lot of like our summer holidays, obviously mum and dad like just give these kids
them
something to
busy.
do. So, you know, just
Here's the
enroll
kids
us.
club.
Enroll us in like some sports camp or something for a few weeks. And often like there was times where I'd, you know, be the only expat kid in some like local sports camp. But there was a time where they would just expose us. And I'm going to speak to my mum and dad about this actually after this conversation to see if this was a conscious decision that they made or it was just like whatever camp's available.
Yeah.
But they definitely threw us in as many different sports as possible. And I remember them enrolling me in taekwondo. And I remember thinking
Cannot
like, this
imagine
is
that.
the dumbest thing ever.
I know.
Like I'm standing on a spot, we're all in lines, and this guy's at the front doing a kick, and I have to copy his kick.
Yeah.
And then I remember just going to the thing there every time, being like, "What is the point of this? Like, I'm not even fighting someone. Like, this is like an art form." And then like I remember after they upgraded my belt from like white to yellow, and I was like, "Why? I literally haven't done anything. Why am I being rewarded for something I do? I can't even see what I've done." And I remember just saying to my parents, like, okay, like, please, like, no more taekwondo. That thing does not make sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did the same with taekwondo. My parents put me through it, and I was training in in our clubhouse where we lived, and then they put me in a competition.
Like
And I'd only been doing
this.
this for about 6 months.
See, I got pushed into the art form version. You know, taekwondo, you can go
So
like
no
a
sped up
contact.
Tai
you
Chi.
can go
No
combat.
contact.
You can go combat, or you can go art form.
You're
My
more
mum
of
and
an
dad put me into
artist.
art form,
Okay,
and I
I
was
should have
like,
stuck to the art form.
we
but-
probably need to swap. But anyway,
So
yeah.
I fought I think it was a yellow belt or something in the
pretty
first.
cool.
I actually won the first fight, which was great. You know, it's the only time I've ever been in a ring. Won the first fight, and then a blue belt came in and absolutely kicked the living shit out of me in front of friends and family, and the whole arena was at Pok Falam on the Human Institute of Performance, where it was. Never went back, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it's,
Traumatized.
people find their level in all sports. Actually, like like I said before the show, 0.01% of kids actually become professional athletes, which is mental, right? I mean, 11% of parents actually think their children have what it takes to be a pro athlete. So that disparity in itself is just showing how much pressure, how much over professionalization there is in youth sport. And, 13, by the age of 13, 70% of kids in America have dropped out of sport completely. So that's it's really alarming. But I think there's an element of, finding your level as well, and that can be quite demoralizing if the sport that you've invested so much time and identity in, if playing football is everything to you and you really believe, and your parents have maybe made you believe that you can be a pro and this could be your future and you'll be the next whoever, finding your level can actually be more than breaking you down in a sporting sense. That can really cut quite deep to a lot of kids. So I think back to my point about having multiple domains, I think if the over specialization thing is a real problem, because like I just mentioned, it's not just about the sport, it's about your identity. Having multiple things, because you played football, you played rugby. Did you play much else growing up?
Well, I didn't play like anything else to the levels that I played those two, but I've always said that I can like pick up any sport pretty quickly, and I don't think that's not a talent that I have. It's just because as a kid, I played a lot of sports.
Yeah.
Like I enrolled. I remember mum and dad made me do cricket for a couple. Again, didn't really like cricket.
Yeah.
I just thought it was just too much standing around doing nothing. I'm like, I want to be in the action doing something. But it was like cricket, tennis. Obviously, we were also very lucky. I think
growing up that our group
Yeah.
of friends, we all lived in the same
Yeah.
apartment building.
Accessibility is a
Yeah,
big,
we
big
had a
factor.
basketball court, well, a basketball hoop. We had tennis courts, we had a swimming pool,
Yeah.
and we had football pitches that were a 10-minute walk away.
Mm.
And I think that was very lucky. I honestly
Absolutely.
I attribute so much of my like sporting
Development,
ability
yeah.
to those years.
Well, yeah,
that's from
incidental play. It's
Yeah.
not coaches teaching you things.
No.
It's playing with your friends for 3 hours after school until the sun goes down.
And we
You know,
literally did that every
every day. That's really
Yeah.
where you're building a lot of these skills as a teenager. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the average American professional athlete, the average age of specialization in the sport they went into is 11.6. So, a lot of these guys were playing multiple sports. You look at-
Sorry, 11.
they
years
started focusing on their sport at 11.
old. At 11 years old, and that's a professional athlete.
That's the professional. These are the top like, across the whole professional spectrum
Yeah.
in America. So, there is room for multiple sports. You look at all of these big names. Roger Federer attributes most of his tennis to badminton, actually. So it's very important, I think, to not fall into one lane for multiple reasons.
I mean,
injury is another one. I'm a victim.
Yeah.
Somewhat of a victim of an overuse injury. My ACL went when I was 12 and I couldn't play football again until I was 18 because they can't reconstruct an ACL until you're fully grown. So during those 5 years, bye-bye meniscus, my knee twisted 15 times or something within 5 years. But, these overuse injuries are a thing. And, what that does, getting a kid, putting a kid on the sidelines for 5 years during their most formative years on a social and development level is extremely damaging, not just to the sport. It's deeper than that. I remember at the football club, there's a photo in the football club and my 4-year-old son walks down the tunnel of the football club saying, "Are you on any of these pictures, Daddy?" And I'm actually, no, I'm at the stand behind this picture of us as a youth team in the stand, and they didn't let me go in the picture. Because I was injured having played for that team. I was sat there with a big thing on my leg in the stand, but I wasn't in the picture. And that story in itself is enough for anyone to realize why they should avoid overuse injuries at all costs, really. Because you remember when I came back from ACL reconstruction, my mum piled the house with all my friends. She knew, she's a teacher herself, she knew what this would do to me as a person. And it did. It really changed me as a person in those years.
Yeah, it's like thinking back to those days. I remember when you first did your knee, and I remember just none of us could appreciate what you'd actually done because as a kid, no one really has serious injuries, right? Like you might break an arm, but you're in cast for a few weeks and you're back. And I remember you would quite regularly, maybe like every few months, you'd put a string of maybe like 4 or 5 good games, and then the knee would go again. And then,
well, I had no ACL. So
and I remember just thinking come on, man. Enough with this rolling around thing. But then, when you eventually went and got the operation done, then I obviously did my ACL like 15 years later, understanding actually what your knee had gone through and just how challenging those years were. And then, just before the podcast, hearing you talk about how hard that was, as a kid, being on the sidelines and how that impacted your confidence, social circles, again, being your mate all those years. I never knew that, and I just thought it was cool that you're always there.
No, I think everything in society is evolving, understanding around diet, psychology, everything, right? And I hope there is support mechanisms out there for children in these, usually early teens. Is between sort of 11 to 14, 15. You see a lot of overuse injuries before proper strength can actually be built. I hope that, your listeners and everyone out there is getting the support they need, but I am more than open to, working and meeting with people who have had these injuries and helping them from a psychological perspective and trying to, create some perspective around it, because it is very, very damaging psychologically in those years when you can't do the things that you thought you'd be doing forever. All of a sudden it's taken away from you. So, something that I'm in the coming years I want to get more involved with, like the supporting of young athletes who have experienced what I've experienced.
So there's lots of things at play here for a parent. It's like, okay, finding a class that is a good balance of, like what you were mentioning, play and just being able to learn through doing. But there's also a balance of then it needs to be a structured class. So there's play and structure there. But then also the balance of not over putting them into something, you know what I mean?
Oversubscribing them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how do you find that, and what should parents do? Like, what are some tools? Because we're saying by far that you need to add movement and sport into children's lives from a young age, regardless of what that is. Anything is better than nothing, right? But then you can get easily sucked into, I've actually never realized what a 11% doesn't sound big, but to me it sounds big in the context of the world, that people really think their kids are going to be professional athletes. Like that's actually insane. Like I've never thought, you probably think that about your child, but I do not think that.
He's bringing the average
I
up.
know.
Right?
It's more
If he does
of
that
just
for 3 kids, that's bringing the average up.
it's more of just what they get from that. But it's like, how do you then balance all of these 3 things to just make it an enjoyable experience that kids will implement into their lives forever?
I wish I had an answer. It's very hard. It really is. And, ideally you have, no issues. The kid can, wants to do whatever you throw them into, but that's not the reality.
It's
and
not.
it is, like I mentioned, you've got to look for cues and, I would say the 4 to 6 session rule is when you're looking at specific sport programs, 4 to 6 weeks, I think is a good amount of time to then have a cooling off period and maybe change the setting or come back to the same coach. Sometimes the kids aren't ready. A lot of the time parents are pushing their kids into specific things too early. It's very hard for a 3-year-old to really want to hit a tennis ball every session for 10, 15, 20 weeks. It gets boring. It's hard for the coaches. My hats go off to all the coaches that do specific sports for that age group, because at least we can change the sport every 2 weeks. But yeah, I'd say that, the 4 to 6 week rule is a good one for specializing in sport.
Yep.
And, the structured autonomy that I talked about earlier, creating choices within within a spectrum of what you want them to do is really important.
What if you have someone in your class who, bless them, is not in any form of the sense, like can't throw, can't catch, has no interest, but the parents put them there because they know exercise is important. Like, how do you handle that?
Well, we mix for our age group. We mix, like, there's a lot of skill-based games. There's a lot of just movement, fun games, right? We want kids to not identify that, I'm failing at this 9 times out of 10. And you have to adapt things. There's something called the optimal challenge zone for children, which is, what do you think? If I threw a ball to you 10 times, what do you think is the optimally challenging zone for you to catch it and want to continue doing it?
As in, like, what's the percentage that I need to be successful?
So what would be too easy?
10.
Exactly. What would be too hard that you'd want to just say, I can't be bothered?
0
as a
sure.
4-year-old.
Okay, I mean 0 obviously, but I'd say 50%.
Okay, so 60 to 90 is where you want to really be. So there's 2 ways to do this. If you start with something that's 20% effective, then usually that's the coach's fault. You shouldn't be starting in lower. You should always start higher. So let's,
start too easy and then make it challenging.
Exactly. You can change variables, whether that's distance, height, speed, equipment, bigger ball, smaller ball. You can modify things to, a good coach should be able to adapt to all the kids in the class within reason. There are, obviously some circumstances that are challenging, but you should be able to get them down from 10 to 6 or 7 and then keep them in that zone.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the variables for parents at home.
Yeah.
Literally.
I think I have one more question on this, because obviously I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to Isla to the classes, whereas a lot of the time it is maybe aunties or carers. And there's a huge difference between when a parent shows up and because it's an accompanied class, where when a parent comes and interacts with the children and gets them to do it, versus I know for them this is like their 1 hour where they get a break. So I totally understand that maybe aunties aren't as engaged, but how do you, because I do know that affects the child.
Yeah.
Well,
it has different effects on different children.
Yeah.
When I turn up to my son's class, it has an adverse effect.
Oh, really?
He doesn't want it. He gets too excited. He wants my attention.
Yeah.
So it depends on the child. And it depends obviously on the other guardian, whoever it is that's taking the child, whether it's grandparents. We have loads of great grandparents, lots of great domestic helpers. And we generally feel that we have to train our younger coaches, especially, to really speak to the guardians when we need their help, because that's sometimes they find that hard when they first start to actually break that barrier to, let's all sit on the pancakes with our children rather than, hey kids, sit on the pancake. It's a different way of approaching it. But yeah, it's different. Some kids thrive when their parents are there.
Yeah.
Some kids just want to be held and, they act out. So it's
so my question with that was like, how do you teach the guardians to be involved? Because sometimes they get over involved. Like, I still find that sometimes I don't know when I should be like, no, Isla, you can go do it on your own, or when she's like mama and wants me to come, that I actually come. So how do you find that balance with the guardian in tow with the coaches?
I mean, the end of the day, you know your child best, and we do encourage parents to, especially in the mini tots age, which Isla is now, I think it's in the middle age. So 1.5 to 2.5 we have this play group, and then 2.5 to 4. That's really where it's kind of a semi-assisted class. And we want parents to encourage independence, but
Yeah.
we can't let them just be in the class because we need
Not
them.
possible.
So it's a balancing act. And we would say to all parents that, try and get your kid to do as much as they can independently, but it's
Sometimes they're clingy.
sometimes you just have to help them through it. And kids learn a lot through mirroring, so if you're out there and actually showing an interest in the games and activities, that has a benefit too. So there is a fine balance between letting them be independent and you also showing an interest and showing that what we're doing is interesting to you as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This is, again, I think what I've said after each of these like youth episodes, episode, the future of the youth. What are we calling this?
How we're transforming lives.
Transforming.
Yeah. Youth lives through fitness.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
I've always
Is that a working title?
We're working on it.
I've always finished these episodes feeling like there's less weight on my shoulders as a soon to be dad, because these are all questions I think about a lot, and I worry about making the wrong choices, or I could be the reason that my child doesn't have an amazing future, or because sport was such a big part of my life, I obviously do think about it. Genuinely, I don't think about the professional thing because I sometimes think I don't know if I want my child to live that life. It's a very tough world to be in.
It is. Social media's not helped.
Yeah, and especially with so much just tied to performance. Like you could be the greatest human being ever, have amazing values and characteristics, but you lose.
Yeah.
And that is just if your identity is so attached to that's everything. And I also know that throughout this whole thing, I've been reflecting a lot on my parents and like, well, what did they do? How did they end up? Because I hear a lot of other parents say to my parents, "Wow, it's amazing you had two boys like represent your country in sport," and they say, "Oh, we were just very lucky that happened." But it is actually kind of rare, you've got two brothers that actually end up being like, really good at a sport, but pretty good at lots of sports. And so I've been thinking this whole time, like, what did my parents do? And I think I never really felt pressure from them to have to do it, nor did they ever put onto us that, you should continue to do this because you could be really good at it.
Yeah, it was all child-led.
Yeah, it was more just like, this could be amazing if you want to do it. Sometimes there was tough love, I think, and I think that was really important, right? There was certainly like many days, you wake up, we'd be playing sport all week, and then Saturday was always football, and then Sunday was always rugby. So the weekends were always just sport.
Yeah.
There was never just an off day.
Yeah.
And there were certainly days on a Sunday where, you wake up and it's raining and it's cold, and you're like, and you're playing on a grass pitch, which means that you're going to be covered in mud. And I'm like, I don't really want to do it. And then they would be like, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I can certainly remember those times where there was some tough love.
Yeah.
And I know that once I get into it, I would really enjoy it. But it's just so that there was definitely like a bit of like a push, but it never ever felt forced. Yeah. And me pursuing the highest level of the sport was, for good or bad reasons, all my own choice. I never felt that pressure. I don't actually think about that.
No, but just to go back on that point, because when Matt was talking about how he felt like your identity in that pivotal age was just shot down in terms of like confidence, and then you were also saying that you were quite a shy kid. Like, you can see how those kind of parallels all form. And it's like, because I think I never got pressure from my dad to succeed in anything like that. I don't tie my identity to a sport, like, and probably I also never went to professional levels, but I do think a lot of that also is how we raise our children.
You did with CrossFit though. Sorry to call you out.
No, but like not to the extent where it was like, I think if I didn't perform the way that I wanted to, but not to the extent that it was like, if I end this, I have nothing. It's like I knew I had other attributes and things that I could be successful in, right? Yeah, it would be shit that something happened, but it's not like this is my end all and be all, right? So I think it's up to us to like, when we're enrolling our kids into these kinds of things, like instead of praising the specific, you're praising the efforts around it. So it's not tied, the sport is not tied to their identity. It's you had an amazing effort. You showed up when it was hard. Like, and instead of, oh, you beat these people, it's like, oh, you implemented your strategy or you prepared well in order to overcome. And that's why you won, not because you're amazing because you won, right? So I think these are like little things that when we're getting into sports and athletics, that it's really up to us to forge the mindset around fitness in order for our kids not to then fall into this trap of, well, fitness makes my parents happy and I want to make my parents happy. And if I lose, then my parents will be unhappy.
Yeah,
like that's the kind of toxic mindset that we have to shift
Absolutely.
from.
And kids have irrational beliefs. You know,
Yeah.
by their very nature, they are irrational little things. They are self-centered. You know, I'm sure you know that. They think everything is related to them.
Do,
Daddy's unhappy, or mummy's unhappy, or something.
I did,
it's always, why is that my fault? Is that my fault? So, you know, they've already have this predisposition to be putting pressure on themselves in a way. They think everything's related to them. So adding that in on top is something I was luckily not put. I didn't have any pressure in that as well growing up. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes I look and think,
you wish you had more pressure.
Maybe, you know, because I mean, it's always, people have this discussion with a lot of people. They're like, you know, if my dad only just sent me to this golf camp or this or that, I don't know, you know, but so there's always, that's the paradox of being a parent, though. Whatever you do means you're not doing something else.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you pointed to earlier with it's just the social media side of it. You know, kids are doing piano, some kids are doing, you know, Cantonese, Portuguese, whatever, you know, and there's always something more you could be doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fear of missing out as an adult is one thing, but fear of missing out on behalf of some little sweet child and not giving them an opportunity, it's like a whole new level of deep. It really does.
Yeah.
It does. It really plays on you. And I think I'd like parents who are watching to realize that they're not alone. Like even someone who's built a program to try and create well-rounded sports people and everything, I'm still feeling that pressure myself. You know, you never feel like you're giving them enough. You know, there's always something they could be doing. Or, you know,
I think it's like, it's calculated pressure, right? Like you know when it's time. I'm sure you as parents like know when it's time to give a bit of pressure because you know they actually like it. You know they're good at it. You know they're, you know, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But I think it's when it's like, I certainly remember days of rugby and football where you have like that kid on your team who was like, you just every week, you're like, I can't believe he's still here. You know, like he's, you know, just the skill set is just
so
he's
off.
clearly not enjoying it. You know, he stands there on the field, like doesn't have any interest in getting. And then you look at the parents on the side and what they do. And they're the ones going like, "Come on, David." I'm thinking about this guy called David.
Yeah, clearly you just called him out. Sorry,
come on, David. Like just get the bloody ball and just run forward. And David's like, no. So when I look at David, I'm like, poor David. Like that's probably not very calculated pressure. Like, but then you think about, have you read Andre Agassi's autobiography?
I have.
Open. And like, you know, he's an amazing story where like immense pressure from his dad.
He still made it.
And he still made it, but hated it.
Yeah,
but still got to be like the very best.
Yeah,
you know,
got
number one in the world.
And you only hear about those stories that succeed. Sadly, for every Agassi, there's God knows how many.
I think just like listening to all of this, like going back to the professional, you know, your kid becoming a professional athlete. There's just so many elements that need to just go your way, and not just once, but like over the lifetime of zero to like whenever that kid becomes a professional. And then becoming a professional is very different to like having a, you know, a seasoned career as a professional. There's just so many things that need to just perfectly work, you know, like, and that's what I always love listening to autobiographies or watching documentaries on the greatest in the world at whatever it is they do. And it's like, you watch the Beckham documentary and I'm like, how did Beckham become like, you know, one of the greatest footballers in the world? And it's like, his dad just said he just absolutely loved football. Like the first time he kicked the ball, he was like, wow, that was ridiculous. And then he just was just mad about football. And it was like nothing that he did, you know, necessarily like made Beckham become that. There was just part like amazing talent in this kid. And then, you know, he found a great team. Found a great coach, had a great environment, had friends who all loved it as well, lived 2 minutes away from a pitch. You know, all these little things like all add up to becoming, you know, this amazing thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. But the statistic is certainly like, okay, you know, that I think maybe not for myself, but kind of that does take the pressure off a little bit. Yeah. You know, like the ability to make it, the percentage of people that actually make it is just so few.
I think we should be looking at the fact that you can almost guarantee 100% that you can create a child who likes sport.
Yeah.
Don't look at the 1% or 0.1% or whatever that become athletes.
Yeah,
if you go about it in the right way, you've almost got a 100% chance of creating a child that has a positive attitude towards sport if you do it properly. So I think those are the things we have to always remember. And, you know, as kids get older, they can decide what they want to do. I'm finding this period particularly challenging because it's that autonomy, that sort of the middle stage of him deciding what he wants to do and me making decisions.
But you
for
also
him.
probably want to bond with him on the sport as well, right? So like
Yeah.
if Rory got into football, you would have this immense bond because you are so into football.
Well, one last thing I'll leave you on here because I know we're getting on, but is that I feel, because I stopped playing football because of my knee.
Yeah.
This is funny. Okay, so I came back from playing golf in Bangkok last week, and I sat him down, and I'm trying to get an answer from him. What do you really love? Is it because he loves baking? He likes hanging out with his mummy and me and doing all these other things, whatever, right? Swimming. What do you really love? And I'd been golfing in Bangkok, so guess what his answer was?
Golfing.
Right. So that he didn't even see me playing. He just knew that Daddy was playing golf for 3 days. And I said, "What's your favorite thing to do?" Golf. So that in itself is like, it does go to show that examples are so important. You can sit there, I can have football on the TV, I can have football. My friends might play football, I might talk about it. But unless he sees me literally going to play football games, he's probably not going to quite get that bug. And so I have been considering dusting off the boots for a couple of cameos.
Nice.
Little does he know the people
Not
are playing
letting
against will be
go.
like 60 years old.
not
Oh, Dad
letting-
scored another free kick.
Not letting go of the stream. Matt, this has been awesome.
That's been very
This has been
pleasurable.
so
Thank
good.
you for having me.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast, and that question is: what is a mantra or a quote that resonates with you right now?
One that stuck with me for the last few years is health is the crown on the well man's head that only the sick man sees.
Wow.
So I like that
Can
one.
you repeat that one more time, please?
Health is the crown on the well man's head that only the sick man sees.
Please tell me why is that something that?
Well,
resonates
I just
with
think we all, like growing up, definitely, I just took my health for granted. Now that I've got more people relying on me, whether that's business, family, and I think longevity is starting to come into my mind a lot more now with my daily decisions and how I want to live my life. And it's life's a delicate thing, and often it's too late to rectify the damage you've done to yourself. So trying to be more proactive about my health is essentially something that I'm really focusing on for the coming couple of years. So yeah.
Love it. Paterson, where can people find out more about you and how can they get involved with Minisport?
Sure. So you can go over to minisport.hk and you'll be able to find extensive information on what we do. And those in Singapore, just put .sg or .tw for Taiwan. After that, we're on Instagram at minisport.hk. We work with a lot of charities and sort of non-profits as well. So anyone out there who wants to partner with us to do work with the community, we have a big coaching team that often are free on the weekends to help with those things. So yeah, that's where you can find me as well on LinkedIn under Matthew Paterson. And yeah, that's me for the day.
Nice. Paterson, this has been amazing. Izzy, thanks as always for joining.
Thank you.
Until next time.
It was a pleasure.
Before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.